What it do, YouTube? It's your boy Mark from NYC, and we back with another reaction. Today we are watching Jordan versus LeBron, the GOAT comparison. I don't know what to expect, bro. I'm just ready to get into it, you feel me? So I ain't gonna do too much. I don't got nothing to say off top, so you feel me? Let's get it popping. Fuck Mars, I'm on Venus. When you're good at something, you'll tell everyone. When you're good at something, they'll tell you. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I wasn't ready for that. Damn, that was different. I ain't gonna lie, that was different. But that's a fact, though. When you're good at something, you'll tell everyone. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, I'm good at it. When you're great at something, they'll tell you. Nah, that just hit different. That just hit different. That was different. Excuse me. Lock in.
Jordan versus LeBron. LeBron versus Jordan. It's a debate that has captured the public's attention for the last several years, especially after this moment in 2016, when LeBron James beat the Golden State Warriors to win the third championship of his career. In LeBron's own words,
that one right there made me the greatest player of all time.
For so many reasons.
I was like, that one right there made you the greatest player of all time.
But did it? Is everything since that moment simply icing on LeBron's cake? Or is LeBron destined to finish his career in Michael Jordan's shadow? We've all heard the arguments from LeBron supporters.
He's bigger, he's stronger, he's faster, he's more durable.
And from Jordan supporters.
Michael Jordan was merely 6-0 with 6 MVPs in the finals.
But the GOAT debate isn't as simple as the pundits make it seem. There are a number of factors relevant in determining the greatest basketball player of all time. In fact, I would say there are 5 things that really matter when determining the GOAT of any sport. These criteria are, in no particular order, accomplishments, longevity, winning, statistics, and what we'll refer to in this video as the eye test. And to be the GOAT, you don't need to be the best in any specific category, but you need to be pretty good across the board. So simply winning 7 championships, like Robert Horry did, isn't enough to get you into the conversation. When we're finished with this video, it'll be plainly obvious that one guy comes out on top. But before we get started, I want to clarify.
Plainly obvious? Hold on, let's look at it. I'm just giving my little 2 cents real quick. We had 256. Alright, I'll come back to that. We got
to be the best in any specific category, but you need to be pretty.
So you got accomplishments, longevity, winning, statistics, and the eye test. So statistics, I'm definitely gonna say that's LeBron. You know, if you take statistics without context, I would definitely say LeBron. Now, if you're gonna add context, I might go with Jordan. But statistics without context, LeBron. The eye test, I don't know. Accomplishments, Jordan. Longevity, LeBron. Winning, Jordan. Statistics, we already said statistics. And then the eye test, I don't know. I feel like when you look at the eye test, I feel like LeBron dominated. He offensively dominated an offensive. He more so dominated an offensive heavier era. Like when you see the eye test with him versus Jordan, it just looks like it's a lot easier for LeBron, in my opinion. Like Jordan, it just looks like it was a lot tougher. But just who's better? When I'm just looking, like who's better? I don't know. I don't know. Honestly, don't know. Let's go back. Let's resume.
Of legacies. It's about who was the better basketball player. If we were talking about legacies, Jordan's is nearly untouchable. Not only did he lead basketball to global popularity, he helped transform Nike into an empire, changed the way players played and how they dressed, and he even made it cool for guys to be bald. And while those things certainly contribute to MJ's iconic status, they don't make him a better player on the court. So let's evaluate the criteria that matter, and we'll start with individual accomplishments. Take a look. Jordan had more.
Alright, these are all the accomplishments. So Jordan got 1 more ring. He got 3 more Finals MVPs. He has 9 more scoring titles. He has 3 more all defensive. He has 2 less all-star teams. So yeah, I mean accomplishments, like tangible accomplishments, like yeah, Jordan is definitely the more accomplished player.
Season MVPs, twice as many Finals MVPs, 9 more scoring titles, and several more selections to the NBA's All-Defensive team, including once being named Defensive Player of the Year.
Tough.
LeBron has more All-Star appearances, but that's largely due to his having played more seasons. In fact, when taking into account retirements and major injuries, Jordan essentially played 13 seasons compared to 17 seasons for LeBron, making Jordan's significant lead in accomplishments all the more impressive. And that's to say nothing of MJ's brilliant college career, which saw him twice named All-American and once awarded College Player of the Year, at a time when the country's best players actually went to college. So regardless of whether you're a LeBron fan or MJ fan, you have to give the accomplishments checkmark to Jordan.
That's a fact. That's a
The
fact.
second criteria in our GOAT analysis is longevity. And this one is also a no-brainer, but this time in favor of LeBron. Not only has LeBron played more seasons in the league, but he's had a longer peak than Jordan. Jordan's peak lasted about 10 years, whereas LeBron's peak has lasted 16 years and is still going.
Yeah.
And he's been incredibly durable during that time, missing significant time to injury only in 2019. That said, the claim that LeBron has been much more durable than Michael has been a bit overblown. Consider that Jordan played in at least 80 regular season games 11 times in his career, including all 82 games an incredible 9 times. Compare that to LeBron, who played in at least 80 regular season games just twice, and in all 82 games just once. So both LeBron and Jordan get high marks for their durability. But durability aside, the bottom line is that LeBron has sustained his level of excellence for a much longer period of time than Jordan, which puts the longevity checkmark squarely in LeBron's corner.
I feel like I don't really know how I feel about this. This is very, it's not adding a lot of context. It's very black and white. It's very looking at a stat sheet. You know what I mean? You know, because Jordan played in an era like where like people threw you to the ground. Like, I'm not even on that. I'm not one of those dudes like in MJ's era. Like, I'm not on that. But I like yo, people got hurt back then, bruh. Like, no bullshit. Like, you know, like nobody's doing that to LeBron. Like, the amount of punishment that LeBron or the amount of punishment that Jordan took in comparison to LeBron is night and day. You know what I mean? I saw it firsthand. Like, the Pistons was, you know, on a different type of timing. So, I mean, like, is that something that even matters to you? Like to you, is it like, well, I don't care. Like, as long whoever has longevity has longevity. You know what I mean? But if we speaking from the integrity of the sport, right? Context means absolutely everything. If we're speaking about the integrity of the sport and what really matters, and we're trying to deviate who is really the better basketball player, all things that happen need to be taken accounted for. You know what I mean? So even you know, the accomplishments, you know, I feel like that's something that needs context. You know, I feel like to just do this without context, it kind of defeats the purpose of a video. It's kind of like, yo, I might as well go on Basketball Reference. The only thing that I feel like he implemented was the criteria. Like, what everybody has a different criteria, so his criteria made this, it humanized it a little bit. But everything else, and speaking about it without context of the errors and the situations and things like that, is not, I'm not really feeling that.
Brings us to the third GOAT criteria, winning. As we all know, Jordan won 6 championships. LeBron has won 3. Jordan is 6-0 in the NBA Finals. LeBron is 3-6. Yes, LeBron has made the finals 9 times compared to only 6 times for Jordan. But let's not pretend that making the finals is the same thing, or even close to the same thing, as winning a title. Take a prime example from another sport, the Buffalo Bills. They're the only team in NFL history to appear in 4 consecutive Super Bowls. But is there a single player or fan of that team that wouldn't trade all 4 of those appearances for just 1 Super Bowl win? Frankly, talk to any fan whose team lost the season's final game and ask them how they felt afterward.
That's painful.
Almost universally, their feelings are of sadness, anger, and disappointment.
Frustration.
And that's just the fans. For players, those feelings are only magnified.
Facts.
Listen to Charles Barkley talk about losing in the NBA Finals.
And I was just in shock when it was over because I was frustrated because I couldn't wheel my team past Michael and the Bulls. And first of all, I don't think I've ever gotten over it, number one. But that was...
How could you get over it? You got niggas like Shaq talking about you never won. Like, bro, me and Shaq got a squabble. Fuck all that. We got a squabble, man. I'm sick of you.
And it's painful.
So we can all stop with this false equivalence between winning the championship and finishing runner-up. In the words of Herm Edwards,
you play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game.
Now back to Jordan and LeBron. As mentioned, on basketball's biggest stage, the NBA Finals, Jordan was 6-0. LeBron was 3-6. And frankly, that doesn't even show how lopsided their records really are. In terms of individual finals games, Jordan was 24-11. LeBron is 18-31. And that's because in 4 of his 6 finals losses, LeBron's team had...
Bro, that's genuine frustration,
31.
Bro.
And that's because in 4 of his 6 finals losses...
See, this is where this is where like MJ bullying people in practice, like this is when it like comes to fruition right here. Like who can I really go to war with for real? Like you got niggas moving like JR. Like you gotta see that. Like niggas wasn't moving like that with Kobe. Like when Ron Artest got the rock, he was like, yo, I got the rock. I'm ready to play ball. I'm ready to hoop. JR did not come ready to hoop. Like that's really the difference. But anyway.
LeBron's team hasn't even been competitive. Twice he got swept, and 2 other times he lost 4 games to 1. That includes being on the wrong side of the 2 most lopsided finals by margin of loss in NBA history. Of course, LeBron fans will tell you that the only reason for LeBron's poor finals record is that his competition was so tough. Ironically, some of these same fans criticized Jordan for losing early in his career to a Celtics team stacked with 5 Hall of Famers, and they conveniently gloss over the fact that LeBron reached the finals so many times in part because the competition in his own conference was so weak.
That's facts.
During the vast majority of his career, LeBron played in what many dubbed the Leastern Conference because the East was so much weaker than the West. On the other hand, during Jordan's playing days, the East was generally considered the stronger conference.
Absolutely.
As Jordan had to battle through hard-fought rivalries against the Bad Boy Pistons, Patrick Ewing's Knicks, the Shaq Penny-led Magic, and Reggie Miller's Pacers. That said, if you want to blame LeBron's failure in the finals on the level of his competition, I won't argue with you. But let's also not blow it out of proportion. If you look at the average number of wins of their finals opponents, you'll see that LeBron's finals opponents averaged 60.8 wins per season, whereas Jordan's finals opponents averaged 61.2 wins per season. So as it turns out, both players face stiff competition.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful.
But a big reason we don't hold the 93 Suns, the 96 Sonics, or the 98 Jazz in the same regard as some of LeBron's finals opponents is because, unlike LeBron's adversaries, Jordan's opponents never actually won the Larry O'Brien Trophy.
Fair point.
Which goes to my original point.
That's a fair point.
That the difference between winning the title and finishing runner-up is huge.
Night and day.
And the reason those teams never won the title? This guy. Look, I'm not trying to say that Jordan's opponents were as good as the Warriors teams that LeBron faced 4 times in the finals. The truth is that Jordan never played a juggernaut quite like that. But there's a pretty good reason for that. Jordan's Bulls were the juggernaut. They were the team winning 70-plus games. They were the team with the target on their back every year. And as the Warriors showed us, that's not an easy place to be. As great as the Warriors were, they were never able to string together 3 consecutive championships. Jordan's Bulls did it twice. So what's the greater achievement? Beating the juggernaut or being the juggernaut? Or to be more specific, beating the juggernaut 1 time out of the 4 times he faced them? Or being the juggernaut year after year after year? And then doing it again, year after year after year. There's no doubt that LeBron's victory over the 73-win Warriors was the highlight of his career.
Sure.
But it's not the first time that an underdog has won the championship, and there actually have been much bigger underdogs who ended up winning the title. But how many times have we seen a player lead his team to 6 championships in 8 years? Prior to Jordan's Bulls, only Bill Russell's Celtics ever accomplished that feat in the NBA, when they incredibly won 11 championships in 13 seasons.
Damn.
However, back then, there was an average of less than 10 teams in the league, and only a couple rounds of playoffs, so it was considerably easier to win a title.
Absolutely.
And no player, not even Bill Russell, ever had a run of winning 25 of 26 playoff series, as Michael Jordan did.
Oh.
Michael's pattern of winning goes beyond the NBA. Let's not forget that Jordan has never won anything but gold in the Olympics, and he also earned an NCAA championship, in which he hit the first of 2 iconic championship-winning shots in his career. All that is to say, when it comes to winning, the checkmark clearly goes to Jordan.
I think when it comes to winning, I don't think it's fair to not mention Phil Jackson. You know what I mean? Like, to know what Jordan did pre-Phil Jackson, you know what I mean, versus what he did while he had Phil Jackson, I don't think that's really fair to not mention. Like, regardless, based on this criteria, I would still give winning to Jordan. But to not mention Phil Jackson, to not mention that he had one of the best coaches of all time, and LeBron James's best coach was Tyronn Lue, and, you know, who's a good coach, you know, but he was not anything compared to Phil Jackson, you know what I mean? Michael had the luxury of just being a player. LeBron has to be a player, coach, GM. He doesn't, like it's not fair to not say these things. Michael Jordan got to just be a player, right? And the thing I think about most when I think about this was when in 19 what was it, the first finals against the Lakers, 1990 to 1991 season, right? So timeout's cold, whatever the situation is, Phil Jackson says, hey, Paxson is open. Hit Paxson, right? That is a coach's job, to really see what is going on the court and make the adjustment. That is what good and great coaches do. So Mike said, all right, Phil, I feel you on that. I hear what you're saying. I feel you. I'm hitting Paxson. Boom, I hit Paxson once. He made it. Hit him again. He made it, right?
Phil asks Michael, MJ, who's open? And he goes, Paxson. He goes, all right, then get him the ball.
Paxson is open. Get him the ball. And I started looking for Paxson.
Everybody, you know, in the world's expecting Jordan to force something through a double team. He doesn't do it. He draws and dishes.
Once Pax hits that first shot, it's oh, okay, fine.
And the luxury that Michael Jordan had to not have to think about those adjustments, while LeBron James is literally the brains of his team, it seemed like, for the most part.
Biggs, run wide. Y'all running and selling in the paint. Run wide and get out.
Right, when the huddle, right, when you listen to those Cleveland teams, right, being in those huddles and talking, it's really LeBron who's leading the brain of the team, you know. So I think that it's unfair to not at least address that, in my opinion. So that's what I will say.
On to the fourth GOAT criteria, statistics. This one is a bit more complicated. I mean, how do you statistically evaluate 2 players who played in different eras under different rules at different positions?
Exactly. That statistics, you need context. That's what I was saying. Like, you need for all of these, you need context. But for statistics, And winning, I feel like those two you needed the most. Accolades, not as much. In eye test, you don't need any. You don't really need any whatever's. What was the other criteria? Longevity. Longevity, you need a little context. You do, but winning and statistics, you need. I feel like you need a lot of context.
One way of doing it is to simply look at the 8 traditional statistics of basketball. Points, assists, rebounds, steals, blocks, field goal percentage, free throw percentage, and turnovers. And we'll focus on per game stats rather than cumulative stats, since cumulative stats such as total career points and total career assists really speak to longevity, which is already its own category.
The only thing I would change about this is I would add 3. I would take away field goal percentage and I would put in effective field goal percentage. I think effective field goal percentage is a way better way of looking at things, because obviously if you look at it like field goal percentage is like whatever you shoot versus whatever you make versus out of whatever you shoot. But I like effective field goal percentage because it accounts for the type of shots you're getting. So let's say Steph Curry, for example. Steph Curry probably shoots maybe 50% from the field. Shaq shoots 60% from the field, right? If you're looking at raw field goal percentage, you can say, okay, based on those numbers, Shaq is more efficient from the field, right? But Steph Curry, half of Steph Curry's shots are threes, and since threes count more than twos, then you have to account the quality of the shot, right? Like if I take 100 threes and make 33 of them versus if I take 100 twos and take 33 of them, that's a completely different number. So me personally, that's why I like effective field goal percentage better, but this will work for now too, I guess.
Game stats rather than cumulative stats, since cumulative stats such as total career points and total career assists really speak to longevity, which is already its own category of the GOAT analysis. Per game stats, on the other hand, is more of an apples to apples comparison. So looking at the 8 traditional stats, we see that Jordan leads LeBron in 5 of them: points per game, steals per game, blocks per game, free throw percentage, and fewer turnovers. LeBron leads in the other 3, assists per game, rebounds per game, and field goal percentage. But that's a pretty simplistic way of looking at statistics. What if we instead turn to analytics? Probably the most well-known analytics stat is player efficiency rating, or PER for short. This metric was created by respected basketball analyst John Hollinger to give an overall rating to a player's performance based on traditional stats like the ones we just mentioned. Jordan has led the league in PER 7 times, LeBron 6 times. Jordan has finished top 3 in PER 10 times, LeBron 9 times. In fact, Jordan has the highest career PER in both the regular season and the playoffs. Another popular analytics stat is win shares. Jordan has led the league in win shares 8 times, LeBron 5 times. Jordan has finished top 3 in win shares 11 times, LeBron 6 times. And when it comes to win shares per 48 minutes, Jordan has the highest career rating in both the regular season and the playoffs. What about box plus minus? Until recently, LeBron was actually ahead of Jordan in career box plus minus. But after the 2017 season gave Russell Westbrook the greatest single-season box plus minus in history by a wide margin, the architect of box plus minus realized that the stat was fundamentally flawed.
As soon as Westbrook do it, now it's flawed. Nah, I can't. That's fuck niggas on that. As soon as Westbrook do it, well, you know, I think we should take a, you know, take a second look. You know, everybody take it easy. You know, we're gonna reevaluate the system. I can't go for that. That's bullshit.
So he made some changes to improve its formula. As a result, Michael Jordan now has the highest career box plus minus in both the regular.
I'm just supposed to jack that at that point. Like, I don't know if I could just jack that. Like, I don't know if I could really just jack that. Like, I don't know how I feel about that. That's very, like, I need to know the specifics of like what that even means. You know, I don't know what a win share is. I don't know what a box plus minus is. I have an idea of what player efficiency rating is. I know what effective field goal percentage is. I know what true shooting percentage is. It's very close to effective field goal percentage, but it includes free throws. I don't know what these are, so it's difficult for me to be able to add any context to it because I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? Like, if I don't know what winning is and I just know Jordan won more than LeBron, there's no way for me to understand, to add context about Phil Jackson or any of those things like that. So for me to just look at this and just be like, oh yeah, especially after we revamped it because Westbrook actually excelled in it, now we want to revamp it, and all of a sudden Michael Jordan just first. Before Westbrook, everything was good, right? Everything was valid, and then when Westbrook blew the shit out the water, we gotta change it up, and all of a sudden Michael Jordan just ended up being at the top. Like, I don't know what this means, and it's just like it's I don't know. I'm not really feeling it like that, you know. But if I knew what it meant, I could probably fuck with it.
And the playoffs. And lastly, what about value over replacement player, which on its face seems to favor LeBron James? Well, value over replacement player is a cumulative stat, and as previously noted, cumulative stats speak more to longevity than they do game-to-game dominance. That said, according to value over replacement player, Jordan owns 6 of the 9 greatest individual seasons ever played, and on a per-game basis, MJ's career rating in value over replacement player is the highest of all time in both the regular season and the playoffs. Are you noticing a theme here? Not only does Jordan beat LeBron in every ratable analytic stat, he consistently ranks as the best ever across the board. Before we move on from analytics, I want to mention a lesser known stat called game score, another brainchild of John Hollinger.
I just want to say, I don't know how fair it is to only do per game basis, right? Michael Jordan did a few years in college. LeBron came immediately out of high school. So, you know, as unfair as you may feel like it may seem for you to do longevity because LeBron has more years, I feel like to do a complete per game analysis when LeBron came in as a 17-year-old and he's still whatever years old doing whatever he's doing, like it kind of, you know, the fact that MJ only played 13 years, you really got, I feel like for the most part, you know, his best part. If Jordan would have played 20 years like LeBron is about to play, it might be different. So I feel like as unfair as it is to talk about, you know, longevity statistics when it comes to Mike, it might be just as unfair to talk about per game statistics when it comes to LeBron. But not really. But I think these are the things that need to be said, though.
Score measures a player's performance in a single game, so it won't tell us who's had the better career, but it does provide insight into who's had the greatest games. Now, we only have game score stats since 1983, so you won't see any mentions of Wilt Chamberlain here. That said, of the 100 highest game scores ever recorded, incredibly 19 of them belong to Michael Jordan. In other words, nearly 1 out of every 5 of the best single-game performances over the last 4 decades has been by MJ. That includes the highest game score of all time for Jordan's 69.18 rebound masterpiece. Comparatively, LeBron has had only 3 of the top 100 game scores. When discussing the GOAT, Nick Wright is fond of asking this question.
The aliens come down. You have 1 game to save humanity. Who's your first pick in the history of the world?
Well, Nick,
that's an interesting question. Who's the coach? Like, can I get a coach? Like if I can get Phil Jackson, I might go MJ. You feel what I'm saying? But if we got Tyronn Lue, I might have to go LeBron. So I don't know.
I think we have our answer. Now that I've finished drowning you in numbers, let's be real. Hardly anyone watching this video knows how to calculate PER, win shares, box plus minus, value over replacement player, or game score. And why should you? This is basketball, not Goodwill Hunting. So let's go back to the traditional stats that we all know and understand. But this time, let's add context to them. What do I mean by context? Well, some positions are simply better than others at racking up certain stats. Let's take rebounding as an example. In a vacuum, if we simply compare the number of rebounds per game of Brook Lopez and Jason Kidd, we might think that Lopez was the better rebounder. The truth is, relative to their positions, Lopez is statistically one of the worst rebounding centers in NBA history, whereas Kidd is statistically one of the best rebounding guards in NBA history. But even a poor rebounding center can grab more rebounds than a great rebounding court. So it makes sense that, to understand the context of a player's stats, we should compare them to the respective positions that they played. When comparing LeBron James to the other small forwards who have played at least 500 NBA games, this is where he ranks. Overall, that's pretty impressive. Now let's see how Jordan compares to all shooting guards who have played at least 500 NBA games.
Who the hell is LeBron second to? What is this? Who's...
As good as LeBron is compared to other small forwards, Jordan is on another level when compared to other shooting guards. He's darn near the top of every major statistical category, and there isn't a single category where LeBron is better than MJ relative to his position, other than assists. So to sum up statistics, whether comparing traditional stats or analytics, and especially when judging these players in the context of the positions they played, Jordan has a noticeable edge over LeBron.
I felt that. I just want to know who's number one in small forwards and points. But, you know, assuming everything is right, I feel this. This is... I felt that. I felt this.
As such, we have to give the check mark to Jordan. And that takes us to the last category in our GOAT analysis, the eye test. And to be clear, by eye test, I don't mean which of these players is bigger, faster, or jumps higher. None of that is relevant unless we're having a track and field competition. And frankly, if physical measurables mattered, then George Murasan would be in the GOAT conversation. No, what I mean by the eye test is, if you sat an average basketball fan in front of a TV to watch a player in action, what would he notice that the player is and is not great at? Thankfully, I happen to be an average basketball fan, and I've had the privilege of watching both LeBron and Jordan during their playing days. So unlike a lot of my fellow YouTubers, I haven't merely relied on highlight videos. Here's what my eyes told me when I saw Michael Jordan play, particularly during his playing days with the Chicago Bulls. He was the best offensive player in the game. He was arguably the best defensive player in the game. He had the best mid-range game. He was the best finisher at the rim. He had the best post-up game, which is incredible considering most players who dominated the post were big men.
And won!
He was widely considered the most clutch player in the game. He was regarded by opponents as the fiercest competitor on the court. He was regarded by teammates as the hardest worker in practice. And when all was said and done, amongst the other stars of his generation, he was the greatest winner. Now, when you're playing against the elite of the elite athletes of the world, to be the best at any one of those things is pretty remarkable. But to be the best at all of them? I tell you, it's impossible, but for the fact that we saw Michael Jordan do it. And when it comes to the GOAT debate, that's the biggest hurdle facing LeBron. He's basically being compared to a guy who was great at everything and practically had no weaknesses. Seriously, judging by the eye test, what's the worst thing we could say about Michael Jordan's game?
3-point shooter.
Probably that he wasn't a very good three-point shooter. Jordan shot 33% from beyond the arc in an era when the average player also shot 33%. So when it came to three-point shooting, he wasn't good, he wasn't bad, he was just average. But remember that Michael played in an age when the three-point shot wasn't a big part of the game. During Jordan's years, teams averaged only 9.5 three-point attempts per game, and Michael himself attempted less than 2 threes per game. And if being an average three-point shooter is a weakness of Michael's game, well, then we also have to call it a weakness of LeBron's game. The difference is that LeBron plays in an era where the three-point shot is a huge part of the game. During the years in which LeBron played, teams attempted on average over 21 threes per game. And LeBron himself averaged 4.3 three-point attempts per game, or 2.5 times as many as Jordan. Despite the increased emphasis on threes, LeBron's career shooting percentage from beyond the arc is only a hair better than Jordan, at 34%. And it's actually slightly below his peers, who averaged 35% from three during his era. But to reiterate, being an average three-point shooter was by far the worst part of MJ's game. For LeBron, it's not even close. LeBron, in fact, has 4 major weaknesses as a basketball player, each of which is readily apparent to anyone who has actually watched him play. First, he's not a good free throw shooter. For his career, LeBron has shot around 73.5% from the free throw line, which is pretty poor for a player who handles the ball as much as he does. In fact, many analysts point out that at the end of games, LeBron shies away from driving to the basket because he's afraid of being sent to the line. I don't know whether that's true, but what I do know is that the odds of LeBron hitting 2 consecutive free throws is statistically not much better than a coin flip. Jordan, on the other hand, shot a solid 83.5% from the free throw line during his career. and MJ never shied away from contact at the end of games. LeBron's second weakness is that he's an inconsistent defender. Sure, he's had some years where he was elite defensively, which is evidenced by his numerous selections to the NBA's all-defensive team, but he's also had several years where he's practically been a liability on the defensive end. Compare that to MJ, who during his Bulls days was a consistently elite defender. In fact, Jordan is the only player to rank in the top 5 amongst all guards in both steals per game and blocks per game for his career. Additionally, Michael led his position in defensive win shares practically every year that he played for the Bulls, an incredible 10 times. LeBron, comparatively, has led his position in defensive win shares on just 4 occasions, and in 5 of his last 7 seasons, he didn't even crack the top 10 at his position in defensive win shares. Now, some will excuse LeBron's recent fall-off on the defensive end as a byproduct of his resting on defense so that he can have more energy on offense. And we can debate the merits of that strategy, but resting on defense is not something Michael Jordan was ever accused of doing. Heck, even as a 40-year-old, he was busting his tail on the defensive end. But what about the notion that LeBron's been the more versatile defender? LeBron supporters will argue that he can guard positions 1 through 5 on the court, such as when he guarded Derrick Rose for stretches in the 2011 playoffs. But LeBron's guarding the opposing team's point guard or center isn't something that happens very often. In fact, during his career, LeBron has spent less than 5% of his total minutes guarding the opposing players 1 or 5. So the versatility argument is highly exaggerated. And look, when it comes to versatility, Hometown Buffet may have a more versatile menu than Spago. That doesn't make it a better restaurant.
That's facts.
LeBron's third weakness is that he's not a very good shooter. And this is a pretty significant flaw for someone claiming to be the GOAT. I mean, shooting the ball is the quintessential skill in the game of basketball. It's the part of the game that everyone practices, whether on the playground, at the YMCA, or in the NBA. Now, some people will contend that LeBron is actually a better shooter than Jordan because he has a better career field goal percentage. And yes, LeBron's career field goal percentage is 50.4% compared to Jordan's 49.7%. But recall what I said about placing stats into proper context. To help us understand context when it comes to shooting, allow me to introduce DeAndre Jordan and Tyson Chandler. We all know that DeAndre and Tyson were great rebounders and defenders, but what if I told you that they were also 2 of the greatest shooters of all time? That would be certifiably crazy. Yet if you look at all the shooting metrics, field goal percentage, effective field goal percentage, true shooting percentage, both of these guys rank near the top in NBA history. Of course, there's an obvious reason for that. As we all know, both DeAndre Jordan and Tyson Chandler take a lot of their shot attempts on dunks, layups, and putbacks, which are extremely high percentage shots. Well, guess what? So does LeBron James. In fact, every single year of his career, the shot that LeBron James has taken the most has been within 0 to 3 feet from the basket. In other words, dunks, layups, and putbacks. More than 1 of every 3 of LeBron's shots has been within this point-blank range, which is aided by his playing in an era where it's been relatively easy to get to the rim, particularly when compared to the physical era in which Jordan played. And just like every other player, LeBron is really effective from 0 to 3 feet, hitting over 73% of these shots.
I don't like the way he's talking. I'm just going to keep it a stack. I don't like the way he's talking.
How does LeBron fare from outside this range? According to basketballreference.com, LeBron's shooting percentage from outside 3 feet is 37.5%. It's even poorer in the playoffs where he shoots 35.9%. And it gets even worse in close and late situations. In the last 2 minutes of games where the score is within 5 points, LeBron hits only 31.7% of his jumpers. Look, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that these numbers aren't very good, which is probably why in the 2013 final...
Why are we not saying Jordan's numbers are? That doesn't make sense. Why would we just say, well, LeBron is outside of 3 feet, but we aren't going to say what Jordan is? I'm not saying it's not better. I'm just like, why are we not saying what it is?
First defensive strategy against the Heat was to basically dare LeBron James to shoot. And keep in mind, this was against LeBron in his prime. Can you imagine an opposing coach using a similar strategy against MJ? Now, LeBron actually credits the Spurs for forcing him to work on his jump shot. But it's not as if his results have gotten much better since then. Here's LeBron's shooting percentage from outside 3 feet over the last 6 years. Yikes.
Bro, we gotta look at Jordan's, bro. Like, why is he not gonna say what Jordan's is? You killing me, bro. You killing me, bro. What is Jordan's?
Given this, he is consistent. For comparison, consider that in the last year of Michael Jordan's career, as an aging player on the Washington Wizards, Jordan shot close to 42% from outside 3 feet. While that's certainly not great, it means that even as a 40-year-old shell of his former self, Jordan was still a better shooter, a far better shooter than LeBron James. Unfortunately, Basketball Reference doesn't have advanced shooting metrics from Michael's Bulls days, when he
Alright.
was a significantly more efficient scorer. But few would argue that Michael was anything but a lethal jump shooter when he was wearing red and black. When it comes to shooting, all of us can recall practicing shots on the blacktop, counting down 3, 2, 1 before launching a shot at the rim. Well, if you were pretending to be LeBron James, you'd brick almost 2/3 of the time. Actually, that's not entirely true. If you were playing against a countdown, it would be much, much worse. And that gets me to the last major weakness of LeBron's game, his performance, or more accurately, lack of performance, in the clutch. Remember when people were praising LeBron for making a couple of buzzer beaters in the playoffs 2 years ago?
Nah, we're on body. We're on body.
They used these stats to claim that LeBron was better in the clutch than Jordan. But look at these numbers carefully. What stands out to you? How about this? People were using a sample size of less than 1 shot per season to make the case that LeBron was more clutch than Jordan. That would be the equivalent of polling just 100 people in the country to try to predict the winner of the next presidential election. So let's use more telling stats, shall we? Here's a situation that's often used to determine a player's clutchness. 5 seconds to go in the fourth quarter or overtime, and your team needs a bucket to either win or tie the game. It answers the age-old question, who do you want taking the last shot with the game on the line? It turns out that in the regular season and playoffs combined, LeBron has taken 94 such shots. That's a pretty good sample size. And how many of those 94 shots has LeBron made? 19, for a shooting percentage of 20%.
20.
Let me repeat that. 20%. Guys, that's not bad in the clutch. That's atrocious. Michael Jordan in the same situation shot roughly 50%.
Damn.
Yes, that's right. Jordan's performance under pressure was the same as it was throughout the rest of the game. And that, my friends, is the definition of clutch. So there you go. When it comes to the eye test, our eyes tell us that one player, Michael Jordan, is great at everything and has practically no weaknesses. And the other player, LeBron James, while also having a ton of strengths, has several obvious flaws to his game. And when all is said and done, after analyzing the 5 key factors of being the GOAT, Jordan gets 4 check marks to LeBron's 1, making this GOAT debate, well, not much of a debate at all. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that LeBron James is a bad player. He's a phenomenal player. Personally, I have him on basketball's Mount Rushmore, along with Jordan, Kareem, Wilt Chamberlain, and Bill Russell. He's just not Michael Jordan.
Jordan, Kareem, LeBron, Wilt, and Bill Russell.
And just to underscore how good MJ was, let's ignore LeBron and Jordan for a minute and focus on the other 3 players highlighted here, Kareem, Wilt, and Bill Russell. Most would agree that these are the 3 greatest centers in NBA history, and each of them has a strong case to justify his standing among basketball royalty. Wilt is an all-time great because he was an offensive force of nature, and he holds a ton of NBA records. Russell is in the conversation because he was a dominant defender and a perennial champion. Kareem also led his team to numerous titles, and in terms of individual awards and accolades, was the most decorated of the 3. Not to mention, he had the NBA's most unguardable shot. Now imagine a center that had all the best qualities from these 3 titans. A player like that would be the basketball equivalent of Thanos. Now add to that player the highest level of intangible attributes, such as a tireless work ethic, unmatched killer instinct, and an ability to deliver in the clutch. And now you'd essentially be looking at Thanos with all of the Infinity Stones, and no one would question whether this player was the greatest of all time. But the truth is, we don't have to imagine such a player. That player already existed. He just happened to be a shooting guard, not a center. When you think about it, Michael Jordan is the real-life version of an overpowered video game character. He had all the qualities we look for in a superstar athlete, and he had it in spades. He's basically Babe Ruth, if Babe Ruth played defense like Willie Mays. And that's why, even in comparison to the other all-time greats, he is truly in a class of his own. Simply put, he's the GOAT.
I do feel like he did make a lot of really good points. I think the best points he made, in my opinion, were like the flaws in their game. MJ pretty much didn't have any flaws. LeBron has a good, or relative to MJ, definitely has flaws in his game. You know, his free throw shooting is subpar for his position. You know, I did like the position comparison. I did like that, and I did like the yeah, those two things I liked. What's that? Position comparison and who had like more weaknesses in their game in terms of eye test. But I feel like in terms of winning, I feel like there's more context that we could add. But I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't know when you add context and when you don't. Like, do you not talk about Phil Jackson and the team that he had around him? Like, you know, and the fact that LeBron never really had the luxury of being able to win a championship as just a player. He's always had to, you know, be the smartest guy on the court. He's always had to be the one to be making those adjustments primarily. You know, other than his coach. You know, is that a moment when you add context? Is that a moment when you don't? I don't know. I feel like these are all things that need to be said. Nonetheless, though, I feel like I feel like even though it was completely apparent that he was biased, and to me, you know, it was obvious that he's biased towards Michael Jordan. But nonetheless, he did still make some good points. He did. I feel like he added context in situations that benefited Michael Jordan more so than LeBron. I feel like when it came to the accolades, the winning, he didn't really want to add context. But when it came to talking about Jordan's the longevity, I feel like he was willing to add more context, even though he completely yielded it. The eye test, definitely, I agree with. Jordan is definitely a better basketball player. If you're just talking about just pure eye test, I think Jordan is better. Only people that really know the game really well will be able to see LeBron's value as much as they see it in Jordan's value. Accomplishments, yeah. Even regardless of the championships, you know, outside of winning, you know, Michael Jordan was definitely a more accomplished player. That's without a doubt. The defensive player of the years, the MVPs, the scoring titles, all of that, I give him that. The longevity, he did give LeBron his flowers on that. Winning, I feel like there was a little bit more context that needed to be added. Statistics, I'm trying to remember what he said about statistics. What did he say about statistics? I feel like I agreed for the most part about statistics. I feel like on the game-to-game basis, I felt like that was slightly biased, but I didn't have too big of a problem with that. You know what I mean? And then eye test, I definitely give it to Jordan for sure. So maybe me personally, yeah, I might. The only thing I might change, I might call statistics a tie. You know what I mean? And when was this video made? This video was made 2020. We're in 2022. We're 2 years later. LeBron is still playing, obviously. So, you feel me? I feel like there's a lot of people who feel like Jordan, you know, if you don't feel like LeBron is really close to passing Jordan, then you're never going to really feel that way. But I feel like LeBron I feel like he's a ring away. He might be a ring and a Finals MVP away from realistically like being there with Jordan to the point where it's like I don't know, it's really a nail biter. It could really go either way. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to say, man. I really don't. Where are we at? 51 minutes here. Definitely like, comment, share, and subscribe if you like these type of videos, and I will see you when I see you. Peace.